He specifically said.
I know. Maybe he's trying to get, maybe he's trying to get fired.
What is needed? I'll use it. I'm up to 53%. They have, I plugged in a front. I know, they have. They used to plug before. We could plug in stuff at our seat a lot. That was nice. Look, it's simple, somehow this is more behind.
Tried to help them out, go home for 2 days. Really pick the right time.
Yeah. That's right. Split the difference, I say.
I didn't do it. You did. You did. Might be right.
Hello, is this Andy?
Yeah.
This is Steve. Left me a message earlier. I'm, yeah, I'm at OSU's interviews, they're getting ready to do the coaching section, so, I'm kind of tied up for the next, I've got a lunch discussion at 10 as well, so, is this yours, can I text you, is this your cell number? Okay. All right, I'll text you when I heard that, but I can do something.
Well, yeah.
Well, I hope to, it's just, I'm gonna do this. There was a question today, I gotta go to lunch with her.
Yes, every minute.
So, yeah, I guess I'll just get back to you, it works out, it works out, we're not.
Oh, and
I was gonna talk for a half hour. He's all right. Yeah.
Hey, until they're not.
Okay, I'll talk to you later then. No, I do not have to. Good Lord.
Because these things do not operate the same way. Grind.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it camera right now? That's right. I wasn't there.
folks. Thanks for being here. We're going to open right up with questions. Andy Backstrom, 4th row right, Letterman row.
Second fiddle.
Right.
Hey, Ryan. Ryan. You know, we have everything going on right now with 2024 bringing the CFP expansion, Big Ten expansion now, with Gene Smith stepping down in that season as well. How do you stay in the moment right now?
Well, just because we're in preseason camp, that part of it's actually really easy. Just because we're in the middle of preseason camp. School hasn't started yet, and we're just focused on that. And from when we wake up in the morning to when we go to bed, we're just focused on getting better as a football team. And so, I mean, that's kind of the focus. That being said, certainly, want to just make sure I say that I couldn't be, any happier for Gene and Sheila. What they've done at Ohio State, the 19 years that they've dedicated themselves, they poured their heart and soul into Ohio State athletics and just the university in general. And, what I owe and my family owes him, I can't even really verbalize. An opportunity to be a first-time head coach at Ohio State. And, he trusted in me, and our relationship is going to go on forever. And so there'll be a lot of time to figure out kind of what the next phase is and how that goes. He'll be with us till next summer, but I think today is just an opportunity to reflect on what great work has been done by Gene, and certainly, going to miss him, but we got some time to worry about that. And that being said, I can't get my mind off inside drill today and the team and where we're going next. So.
Far right in the back, Spencer Holbrook, Letterman row.
Right here on 5-6 practices in, but have you seen what you need to see from your right tackle job to feel confident that that's going to progress?
Right tackle?
Yeah.
We've been moving some guys around to figure out what the right mixture and combination is going to be. So when you say right tackle, yeah, I mean, I like the progression that we're making. I think that when you look at Josh Fryer, when you look at Tegra, when you look at Jimmy Simmons, and when you look at Luke Montgomery, all 4 of those guys are competing at a high level. Zen's also in there. George is getting better, but those 4 guys are competing, and we're trying to figure out what is the best mixture of right and left. And Justin and Mike and all the guys in there are working hard to figure that part of it out. But I'm encouraged. I'm excited. I think we have a chance to be good at that position.
You have Josh Fryer there for basically the entire spring at left tackle.
Yep.
And now you start to move that around. Is there any caution in doing that, knowing that you might mess something up unintentionally?
I mean, we always have to figure what the best 5 is, and then where their best position will be. We've had guys that have swung before. You guys know that. And some guys it's easier than others. Josh has been able to kind of move back and forth pretty good, which really helps his value. Other guys, it's a little bit harder. But for the most part, all 4 of these guys are pretty athletic, and they're not really, too right-handed or left-handed, so they can handle it a little bit better. But we want to get settled here, by midweek here, end of this week, so that guys can kind of settle into those positions. But if we don't make those decisions now, it's going to be harder to make them in 2 weeks down the road. So those are the hard decisions that we've been talking through, and when we're evaluating, like literally as we speak.
4th row middle, Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, we talked to the safeties yesterday, and when we were out there, first day of practice, we saw that group of Sonny, Jihad, and Lathan. Coach Knowles seemed to like that group. Coach Eliano didn't want to, put anything in concrete. But what have you seen from that group that you like, and kind of the rest of the safety group? How is that shaping up?
And today was the first day in pads for us. So, this week is a huge evaluation because now it's football. Before it was just helmets and shoulder pads, and you're installing, and now you're starting to learn about the whole thing. I think the good thing is we have some good depth. So there's some really good competitions going on. I don't think anybody's won a position yet, but also we have some competitions within personnel groupings. So, we have, bigger groups and base, and then we also have nickel and dime and some different groupings. So you're seeing some guys have some opportunities to prove what they can do. And the more they can do, the more they can stay on the field. If you're limited in coverage or you're limited in the run fits, then you have to be taken out in certain personnel groupings. So we have some nickels that are competing. Cam Martinez is really, I thought he had a really good day today, probably his best day that I noticed. We'll have to see the film, but I thought that was really good. I think Sonny's had a great start. You can just see what he's doing. He's able to do a lot of stuff. Cody Simon has had a good first few days, and then and Jordan Hancock as well. So I mean, there's a lot of guys that are kind of rotating through in that position, and we'll kind of see how it all shakes.
Third row right, Tony Gervin, Buckeye Huddle.
About Sonny, from the perspective of quarterback, play caller, coordinator, what would a guy like that, how would he affect your thinking at each level?
Well, it depends on where he is. When he's playing the bandit, that's a little bit of a different deal. When he moves over to play the adjuster, that's different. If he moves over to the Sam, that's different. So the good news is he can move around and we can put him in different spots. And like you said, that's a little bit harder for the offense just because, a lot of teams would say, well, that guy is, a certain position and exactly where he's going to be. Sonny can move around and he can do a lot of different things. And anytime you can do that, just like on offense, it brings versatility. Like, for example, Xavier Johnson, is he a receiver? Is he a running back? You can see down the stretch how that played out. Well, it's the same thing on defense. The more things you can do, then the harder it is for the other side of the ball to identify what grouping's in the game.
How do you balance what he can do with what he can't quite?
The art of coaching right there. Exactly. Letting them play fast, having enough scheme. The term I use is, you got to get really good at your fastball, and then you got to have a curveball and a changeup. But, if you're throwing all curveballs and changeups, then your fastball is no good. They're just going to sit on it, So you got to get really good at your fastball, and then you only need a couple pitches. You have too many pitches, then you don't get good at your fastball. That's the best way I can describe it, and I think that's the art of coaching.
Third row middle, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, Omari Abor put something on social media that he had a surgery. Just what happened to him and what's his prognosis for getting back?
Yeah, I don't know if I have an update on that. He did have a procedure. I don't know if I can get into all the details of that, but it's going to be, at least a couple months anyways, I guess, before he's back.
And regarding just Oregon and Washington coming into the conference, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think they'll bring to the Big Ten?
I honestly, it's like there's just so many things that are like higher on the priority list for me right now. Honestly, I've kind of deferred to Gene on those things, and I'll continue to do that and have conversations. But I think right now, like, again, I can't get my mind off inside drill and kind of what's going on in red zone today and that kind of stuff. Gene's been such a great leader for me, and certainly this first few years, kind of taking a lot of that stuff off my plate. It's just focus on the team, and that's kind of where my mind's at right now.
Front row right, Austin Ward, Rivals, the podcast, 97.1.
Right. Omari was probably maybe 4th or 5th down there on the depth chart. I don't know. That's the way you see it. You wanted to play maybe less guys, pare down the rotation a bit at defensive end. When you evaluate that group of on the edge that you have right now, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel okay because I feel like you got JT, Jack, Kenyatta, and then you're seeing Caden, Mitchell, really. Having a good camp, and you can see it. You guys will have an opportunity to see a couple more practices, but I think you'll just see the way that those guys are moving in their pads. You can see the way that they're running. You can see, early on in the season, I think you'll see some good production out of them. And we have some young guys coming up and trying to be creative about some other backup plans. But if we can stay healthy in those positions and continue to grow, then we'll have what we need.
Trying to decide what you want to do with the tackles, that you wanted to do that relatively quickly. Can you describe this next phase? Is the scrimmage Saturday?
Yeah.
And then you can still certainly change things throughout the month, but are you wanting to have a lot of decisions made coming out of Saturday?
Some, for sure. Yeah. I think there'll be some direction at the very least. Guys start to pull away, and then but those competitions continue even into the season. But this week is a defining week for us for sure, and I think coming out of the weekend we'll have more of an idea where we're at.
Second row right, Nathan Barrett, Cleveland.com.
As it relates to quarterback, you talked about how this progression has typically worked for you guys in the past, and I'm just curious, now that you're in pads, what are the things that start to sort of crystallize typically in that regard, things you seeing on the field or not, and where is that process right now?
For the quarterbacks. Yeah. Well, the hardest thing about playing the game of football is you don't really get a feel for what you have until you play the game. And I know that sounds silly, but basketball, you can go shoot around and play against each other in the park, or, you can go to the batting cages, you can do those things. But in football, how do you really simulate a game? And for a quarterback, how do you simulate the pass rush? It's impossible to do. Having 300-pound guys going against each other, like 4 of them going on at once right in front of you, and then trying to process what's going on with the coverages and the protections and what's it down and distance in the situation. And the ball can just be a little bit off, and the ball gets tipped up in the air for an interception, or it's completed right here for a first down, or when do you decide to throw it or pull it down, when all these different things, the decision making processes. And so you just feel that when you have teamwork. 7-on-7 routes on air. Okay, you get to see if they have the ability to get it done. But now, as you're starting to see some of the situational things, like today, we worked on short yardage, we worked on red zone. We had a couple different things yesterday in third down, third and long. You're starting to see some of these situations, and you're starting to see some of this stuff start to crystallize. Like you said, can they do these things? And what does it look like? And if you take a small sample size, it's harder. When you get these bigger sample sizes, as we start to put more and more practices behind us, then you can start to see where their progression is, or the areas that they need to improve in.
Right next door, Doug Labori's the podcast.
So just to clarify, Josh Fryer is working at right tackle some?
Yeah, those guys are they're moving around right now at both sides. Yeah.
So if Josh had been at left tackle most of spring, would the reason to have him work at some at right tackle be because maybe Luke Montgomery is ready to be your left tackle, and Luke and Josh maybe could be your 2 starters?
Those are all the conversations that we're having now. I can tell you that we're very excited about Jimmy Simmons. And I didn't know no, he likes to be called Jimmy. I know, that's what I just said. Yeah. So we're calling him Jimmy until I'm told otherwise, because I was calling him Josh. They said, no, he likes to be called Jimmy. It's okay, Jimmy. He's off to a great start. And I think Luke Montgomery has a really bright future ahead of him. So again, these are all exciting things. Tegra does a lot of good things. Josh Fryer's done good things. So I can't tell you that like one's in front of the other. What we're trying to do is project out how this all shakes out down the road and what's best in the long term. And I think by this time next week, I'll have real good answers for you. Right now, I mean, this is all stuff that we're yelling at each other about in the meeting rooms.
So, you just lost 2 of the best tackles in the country. What you're saying here is you got to find 2 tackles, guys who can play tackle right now, but also maybe so you don't have to go through this again a year from now, you are thinking a little long term where guys fit best now and later.
And, September, October, November, December. This is a long time down the road. And the further you go down the road, one path, it's harder to return back. And we just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing here. And doesn't mean that we have the answer right now or that we are going to make a long-term change. But having a couple practices, moving them over to see how they react isn't a bad thing to do.
Yeah, a Gene question. You touched on it, but just how much has he helped you? I mean, what would you want to just say about his legacy and how you're a first-time head coach, obviously, and what he's meant to you?
Well, the fact that he played football, he has a feel for the game. He understands the game. His tremendous EQ, just understands, people. And I just think about, 36 sports and over 1,000 athletes that he manages and all the coaches. And there's just so much going on here at Ohio State. There's so much that comes at him politically. Just there's a lot going on. And the way that he's handled it with grace is remarkable. And just, weekly things that he and I would talk about, or he'd come on a Friday morning and we'd talk about that game, and he'd just give you just different, bits of advice, whether it's, how to manage people or, what's coming down the road, just, how to handle being the head coach at Ohio State, because it's unique in and of itself. what to stay focused on, what not to listen to, what to, really focus your efforts on. And so because of all of that, it's allowed me great clarity. It's also allowed me great confidence to do my job, that along the way, just that he believed in our values and how we do things here. And, has allowed us an opportunity to hire one of the best staffs in America, and so, but I just see the interaction he has, what he's put in place here, the Circle of Care, the Leadership Institute. I could go on and on. But ultimately, when you leave someplace, you want to be able to talk about the impact you've made on people, and there'll be a lot of people that talk about that for sure, and I'll be one of them.
Question about the scrimmage and a guy like Evan Pryor, who hasn't played in last year, obviously, really hadn't really played much in 4 years. How's he coming along, and how important is Saturday for guys like that?
It's funny you say that, because I just getting off the field here, some guys flashed. I thought he flashed today. I thought he had a nice practice. So that was exciting to see him back, with the pads on. We were not tackling to the ground today. We had a tackling drill, but we didn't tackle guys to the ground. We will on Saturday. So that'll be great. But it was a physical practice, and he showed up. I thought he was moving good. I think he's getting his confidence back, coming back from the injury. As you know, he's a threat out of the backfield, running routes, but he's also, learning to really run the ball inside the tackles as well. So good to have that weapon.
Right next door, Joey Cobb.
I know it's probably early for this, but any better sense on how you want to handle play calling, either the scrimmage or the season as we get more of things?
No, nothing new yet.
Figured I'd try. And with regard to the tackles, you talked about kind of mixing and matching them and other stuff you're yelling about in the meeting room.
Yep.
What are for those four guys, like, what are the traits you're like weighing in that? Like, is there one thing one guy does really well that you like, or how are those kind of factors all weighing?
Yeah, I don't know if I go through and compare all of them right now, but we need somebody that we can count on in protection to hold up against the best defensive ends in the country. That's the good news is they're going up against some really good ones every day in practice, so that's a good test. But they also got to have the toughness to be able to, not only handle what we do mentally, but throughout the whole season. So there has to be some resilience about them mentally, and then physically have the ability to athletically block the guys that we need to in the run game and the pass game. And have the length to be able to do that physically. I think for the most part, the guys who are there, they're built like tackles. Luke could probably play multiple positions. He's that athletic, but they all have the length to do it. And, they don't have necessarily the experience, and that's what we're trying to get in practice every day. But yeah, we're looking for guys who are athletic enough, but also have the toughness to be able to do what we need to get done and win games in the fourth quarter and obviously the end of the season.
You mentioned Amari. How are you guys health wise other than that?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's not, anything else right now that's noteworthy. There's a few things that come up, that are short term, but that's part of being at camp.
Right next door, Tim May on 3 Letterman Road, the Tim May podcast.
Show, whatever. Two quickies. Number one, when Gene came to you and said, Ryan, I want you to be our next head football coach, just in a nutshell, what did he lay out to you? What was that moment like? You understand what I'm saying? Because that was life-changing for you.
It was. Well, it was unique just because of the situation in 18 and then the way it all played out. In 18, when he pointed at me, I thought he was pointing behind me, because I wasn't sure if he was talking about me or not. But then as things played out, there was a lot of people involved with that to help manage that and make that a successful situation. And then we had conversations leading up to that, at the end of that season, certainly with Urban and everything else. So, but I think for me, it was that he believed in me as a person. And that was a big decision. And again, that's why I'm so grateful for it. But he obviously saw something and that instilled confidence in me to do my job.
It's pretty interesting listening to you today, going through these defensive guys you're seeing rising and coming around, and you understand what I'm saying. I mean, are you liking this head coaching aspect of things instead of being a glorified offensive coordinator to a certain extent? I mean, what are you getting most? What have you gotten most out of it, even this past week?
I mean, I would say I probably have gone back to some of my old ways this past week, quite honestly. But I think as we were just talking here, think about that season, and Greg Madison stopped by today, you know, so we're talking and had a great conversation with him, and just he gave some great feedback. But going into that season, I forget what it was, but I don't know how many guys on that defense had actually started in a college football game. And then you compare that to what we have coming back this season, so much more experience. And you just see it. You see it with the confidence. You see it the way that, you know, the guys are coaching on that side of the ball. But it has been great in the off season. It has been great in the spring and certainly in the preseason to be around it. But I'd say the last probably week or so, I've been focused on the offense.
Are you backsliding because you have to, or are you backsliding because it's natural to backslide?
Natural to backslide, probably. Yeah.
Third row right, Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Ryan, when we talked about Jordan Hancock and about how much improvement you've seen from him, where do you see it the most? Or is it just he's just flashing all the time?
Yeah, the DBs have flashed in general, getting their hands on a lot of throws, much more challenging of the routes. But Jordan is very competitive. I think the biggest thing is Jordan had a full season of preparation going into this year, where last year he had that hamstring and it just got him out of whack. And that was a very difficult thing to come back from. As you guys know, those hamstrings can be really difficult. They're just finicky. And so I think that's the first thing. Plus, you know, when guys get into that, you know, that third, fourth year, you know, they start to get their rhythm going. They start to feel it. And, you know, so you're starting to see that with Jordan. Denzel, the same way. Just tremendous. Davison has been really good. Just been very impressed with the corner play. So hopefully that's going to translate, you know, this season. But usually what you see on the field in practice, you're going to see in the game.
I think after the spring game, you mentioned you wanted to have like a pro-like offseason. Have you seen a difference, not just his play on the field, but the way he carries himself, the way he leads?
Yeah.
So far in camp?
Yeah. All the above. Yeah. So, you know, again, you don't want to create all these crazy expectations for people, but, you know, they deserve to get called out for what they put in the offseason. Now they got to go put it on the field. And, you know, this week is important to build up that stamina, that kind of armor, that callus that we need to go play football, because there's been a lot of hard work put into this point. And I can't wait to see these guys play against Indiana.
Just a few more folks. Far right, Adam King, WBNS.
Coach, I know we keep coming back to the quarterbacks, but I'm curious, how tight is this race in your mind? You talk about things crystallizing. How close are these two quarterbacks to each other, or is somebody finally pulling ahead here?
I mean, it's a good battle. It's back and forth for sure. Yeah. And you know, they know that, you know, this week is important to them, and the scrimmage on Saturday will be important, and they're constantly putting up, you know, numbers on a daily basis, and so we'll compare the statistics, but there's also the eyeball test, and no, they're both competing at a high level, and then the other guy's doing a good job too. Tristan and Lincoln are both trying to, you know, get better every day. So, yeah, it's back and forth.
How much have you seen your coaching be a little different this offseason? Kind of going back to CJ when he was in the battle, not having one guy that you can focus in on.
Yeah, that's probably, yeah, that's a good question. It hasn't really changed the coaching. It's just a different dynamic. Yeah. Yeah, I think when you look at where, you know, Justin and CJ were, you know, where Dwayne was in that preseason, you know, they were kind of, you know, they were, you know, there wasn't as much of a competition, I guess, the best way to put it, where this one's a really strong competition. So that is unique. That hasn't changed the coaching. We're still coaching them really hard.
Keep right. Bill Landis, the podcast Rivals.
Ryan, where are you guys at with the center position? Is that kind of Carson Hinton's deal, or is he competing with Jacob James?
Carson and Vic, really, you know, Jacob is in there too, but I think that competition is heated up between Vic and Carson right now.
What have you made of Carson's progress, I guess, from handling a lot of first team stuff in the spring?
Good. Yeah, I think it's been good. The more reps he gets, the better. He's going to have to continually get better every day. And I think this is for both of those two guys. I think this next week is going to be critical to figure out where they're at, because now's where you find out. You're a little bumped and bruised and tired, and this, the scheme's adding up, and who's going to now take the next step. I think it'll be clear, but we'll see. But that's a pretty good battle right now.
That sounds like maybe Vic's made a little bit of a jump, because I don't know if you guys talked about those terms in the spring. So what's allowed him to do that?
I think a full off season in our program. I think he's changed his body. I think he understands what we're trying to do now, and the resources that we have here. So he's a different looking body than he was in the spring.
Steve left. Justin Holbrook, CMH.
Gene still has about a year left here. What do you hope to still learn from him before he's on his way out the door? He's still a resource in the backyard.
Yeah. Just as there's a lot of things that are going to be changing. We have a new president, and then we'll have the transition with a new AD, and so there'll be some change. Although, like I mentioned to Gene when he told me about it, that's kind of par for the course. I feel like since since I started in 19, every year there's usually something that goes on, and so we'll just manage it the best we can. And I think his legacy speaks for itself. But I know that he wants this to go really smooth, and I know he wants to make sure the transition's really smooth.
Your relationship with him that you'll use or try to use for the next AD when they take over?
Constant communication and alignment is critical. I felt like he and I were always aligned, and that was very important. I see across the country that isn't always the case, and I never took that for granted. And being the AD at Ohio State isn't easy. Being the head coach, the head football coach at Ohio State isn't always easy. There's a lot of stuff that comes at us, but we stuck together on times, and there was most of the time we agreed on things, but there was a couple of times we disagreed on something, but had great conversation and worked through it and challenged each other, but just had a great relationship, not only working relationship, but also just as friends, and Sheila and Nina. And so, I'm hoping that we can, with the new AD, build the same relationship.
Second row left, Steve Hellwagon, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach. Regarding the quarterbacks, we talk about them being the function of the guys around them. In the spring, the guys around them kind of struggled at times, given the protection that they want. Are the guys around them giving them the support they need so that you can see what you need to see out of the quarterbacks?
Yeah. We're seeing a big step forward in that area.
Other question I got: how involved do you want to be in the selection of both the new president and the new athletic director, if at all? I mean, you got to have somebody that you feel comfortable with, I would think.
Yeah, I mean that decision won't be made by me, but we have great people here, and they'll do what's best for Ohio State. And I know Gene certainly will have his hand, at least give. I'm sure they'll ask his input on things, and I trust that they're going to make a great decision. We have great people on the board to make decisions like that. I got to coach the football team.
With Jordan, even last year, it felt like the way you guys talked about him, something was clearly missing from that secondary when he was gone.
Yeah.
Just what does he bring to that secondary, and what was missing last year that maybe he would have added?
There's a competitiveness to it. There's also a depth part to it. But when you add Jordan to the mix, when you add Davidson to the mix, when you add Lorenzo to the mix, when you add some of these guys to the mix, now it's very, very competitive. Not only because you have competitive personalities in the room, but you also have more mature guys in the room, and you have depth where there's competition for the positions. So all of that mix is made for a lot of improvement and a great environment.
This time next week, you hope to have a starting quarterback named Brian. I mean, do you have in your head
By this time next week, what was it, Wednesday?
Yeah,
I don't know, but I will say that I think by this time next week we'll have some more clarity on where we're going. Yeah, at least headed into the first week. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, you can be in this room till 1. You can be on the field till 1:30. I have asked our facility top-notch facility folks about getting some tables back out in the Biggs lobby, and I did get an